Hello, my name is Hope and I am an INTJ. Just doing some INTJ stuff today. I'm really interested in personality tests lately, so I'm just going through and finding what I can find and taking them. This one is very interesting. I found it as something that is specifically targeting the cognitive functions. It's called Mistype Investigator. You can find it at mistypeinvestigator.com. And what's a little bit unfortunate about this is it seems that they've, in the past, few years ago, actually received some negative commentary about their test. And I don't know if they're still updating it. But it'll be interesting to kind of figure out what this test is like. I've never seen it before. Apparently, it has 80 questions. Hold on to your hats, everybody. It says to think about your answers and reflect deeply. I would suggest that for everyone in their daily life and not just when taking tests. Okay. What's really interesting about this is that instead of a Likert scale where you click bubbles, it is a slider, which could be very different for different people. So we'll see how that goes and how that affects things. Okay, so when making a decision, I mostly rely on facts or own explanations and theories to prove my point. I'm a bit in the middle on those two. While I would love to use facts and experiences, I don't always have them available. I think probably because I kind of pick up on patterns, and those are the things that I retain and stuff. So it'll probably be a little bit more that way, but I do want to do that. And I try to whenever I have them available. I'll go more this way. I find it easier to understand something by broader explanations and reading between the lines, or having the data forming my own conclusions and observations based on what I already know. I am a pretty data heavy person. I do like to have the information inform my conclusions, but I also think I'm pretty good at picking up on what people are putting down, and especially when it's thought, when they're talking about the way that they're thinking and processing information, I'm pretty good at listening to that and then asking questions to go deeper into that. Easier though. What is easier to do? I think I'm very 50-50 on that. I'll leave it. I usually tend to give personal meaning to something I experience or find my own explanation to something I observe. Yeah, I can give personal meaning. I feel like FI is very value driven and will find the meaning in personal experiences. Find my own explanation. I feel like those are saying kind of the same thing for me. So I will leave that in the middle because I feel like those two things are almost the same from my. Let me know if you feel like those are actually two different things. It's weird. I find it hard to openly express my inner self. Assert my own needs, may overanalyze things during stress. Okay, so become overly critical or overanalyze. Let's see. I think this is more true because I often think my needs take a backseat to other people's needs. Traditionally, because I've been the one who have been handling my own needs and I don't want to put those onto other people as a burden. So it's kind of like avoidant coping behavior, but whatever. I can express my inner self in the right circumstances. And I'm not really overly critical, maybe on myself, but not overly critical of people during stress. Other people. I don't know. I tend to explore existential reflections. That's where NI lives, baby. With impersonal or personal involvement. Oh, this is such a tough question because if you think about NI, if you have it and you use NI as your first function, so this shout out to you, INTJs, INFJs, usually it's both impersonal and personal. And what I mean by that, it's like it's deeply personal because it's the first function. It's like what is always happening in your mind, and it's very closely tied for me to FI. Um, but you can also step outside of yourself to reflect upon existential things, I suppose. That's tough. I'd probably go more impersonal because you can kind of distance yourself from things. Okay, my perception of reality is fixed until my knowledge is upgraded, constantly changing and evolving. Ooh, ooh. I mean, I feel like this would catch out some INTJs. It's a tough question because we would like to think that our perception is constantly changing and evolving, but okay, there's a fine point here because we would be, or I'll speak for myself, constantly changing my mental models, which is kind of perception of reality. So I'm kind of taking bits and pieces and it's kind of adapting and changing and evolving over time. However, there are some things that exist within reality that I definitely tinker with and model, and then I kind of like set it aside and rely upon those kind of models or knowledge because I'm lazy. You know, the brain is lazy. It's too much to be constantly changing and evolving. But I'll go more towards this side. I tend to add new knowledge to my understanding by unconsciously connecting the dots, applying general principles to existing data. Again, doing both of these things. Yeah, I mean, oh, I feel like that's very NI and that's very TE. Why are you doing this to me? Da, 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 da. Hmm. I tend to favor leaning into my TE a little bit more. I tend to lose cognition of time and space by speculating what's possible instead of focusing on what's real, or be absorbed in a stream of sensory perceptions. This sounds dreamy, like I almost want to be there. But no, oh, well, I guess they both sound kind of dreamy. I guess it depends on your perspective, right? I exist outside of time and space. I have often said that to myself. Um, but I do focus on what's real as well, because that's the TE practicality. So it's really interesting, but I will go more towards this. I tend to explore the wider meaning behind actual reality that's in front of me instead, leading to inner reflection, or many possibilities, and how I can relate them to my own experiences. Probably more towards this side. Ooh, but I do like speculation. That is also a hard question. But I'm very practical and pragmatic. I mean, you gotta look at feasibility and the probability of what is real, and I think that's important. More tempted to accept a theory if it's backed up by concrete proof. Absolutely. Makes logical sense to me personally. Absolutely. Hmm. Hmm. You know, sometimes my logic is flawed, and I'm willing to accept that. Hmm. During reasoning, come to conclusions sequentially, analyzing, classifying, abstracting similarities and differences, then I test them to see. I naturally come to the conclusion first based on available data and verify the results. That's tough because I use both quite a lot. Because I analyze a lot of data for my job as an internal auditor, just constantly analyzing data. And so a lot of times I feel like I'm broadly categorizing things and kind of forming an impression with a very quick high level. And that's kind of like hypothesis formation, right? If you think about the scientific process. And so you form the hypothesis and then you kind of like test it. Um, so I don't really jump to conclusions. I'd say more like this, but that might just be like data training and such. When making a choice, I won't compromise my own integrity or what makes sense to me, even if others don't agree. Dude, bro. My integrity is what makes sense to me. Um, when making a choice. Yeah, I feel like my integrity is very important. Um, they're kind of like together. This test is so interesting compared to the MBTI, which I took the just last week, because this one has a lot more dichotomies that aren't dichotomies. They're like kind of the same thing, which is really interesting. Maybe that's why there's 80 questions. I had an enjoyable experience. I tend to appreciate it as it is, or appreciate it for the meaning it brings me. Uh, kind of both. I kind of see these as the same thing as well. Um, the experience is what it is, but while appreciating it for what it is, you're kind of appreciating its value and the meaning that that value creates. So, let's say I do reflect, so I'll go more towards meaning. When I finish my work and present it to others, I tend to appreciate other people's recognition, and I may feel bad if it doesn't match my expectations. The objective quality of my work, definitely this one. Like, people gotta tell me my work is valuable so that I can decide whether or not I will continue doing the work. If it has value, I will continue. If it doesn't, I will stop. How would you describe your creative process? Strive to give shape to my own mental wanderings. I tend to draw inspiration from little things that impress me and then transform them into something new and original. I'm definitely much more taking things from the world around me and building upon that for creativity. I mean, yes, but this comes second. So that's interesting. Find greatest value in initiation of new ideas, initiation of new relationships. Ba-bam. During conversation, get straight to the point, find myself going off topic. I like doing both. I think I'm capable of staying on task and to the point, but I do like a good tangent, so I like actually conversing with people who have any because they will go off on random tangents, and I can just join them, and I don't have to be a taskmaster like I sometimes am. But we'll go here because I like clarity. I think that reality is what can be experienced through 5 senses. Reality is multifaceted and goes beyond the sensory. Oh, there we very different. I prefer fighting for a shared cause, something that will help my community. Being loyal to something, ideal person or cause, the right thing, what's closer to my own beliefs. I don't really have strong feelings either way. Obviously, if I have a community, it's kind of small. It's more like individual. So I care about individuals. Maybe that's like more of I care about being loyal to individuals. Probably that. Primarily focus on a single point of view, explore it in depth, multiple points of view as I see the potential in each of them. I mean, can do both. Sometimes you do a lot of different points of view because it's kind of interesting, and then you kind of select one, and then you explore it in depth because I like depth. So maybe more towards this though. Tend to give personal meaning to my memories, look at memories as they are. I don't have memories. My memory is so bad. But I would say probably more towards this. Because I don't have the memory to take them as they are. It's so distorted by time and how much I can't remember detail. How do you look back on your personal experiences? Judge personal experiences in terms of good and bad? Think I can learn something from each personal, even if it's bad or painful. Absolutely. I think that's a growth mindset. Like look at your past experiences and say, how can I do better without overthinking it. Like try not to think it, but also be like more towards optimism and growth. Hopefully, I don't know. Social situation, look for human contact and interaction. I like a peacefully shared atmosphere. I enjoy the moment, have fun, and or chill. Okay, I'm gonna lean heavily into and or chill. Because like peacefully shared, sure, but like chill. Uh, I'm driven by my inner vision of a matter, my outer devotion to a matter. Probably inner vision. Um, Definitely very much driven by what I would like to see come to fruition. I am more prone to walking a beaten and familiar path, pioneering my own path. So that's a very interesting question. I think that everyone should kind of ask themselves, because this kind of gets a little bit stale and boring. Um, so often, what I will do, and probably INTJs will do, will be kind of like continuing to innovate on like a mental model or a process to make it more efficient, optimize it. Maybe the context has changed, and so that the model has to adapt. So probably more in this direction. I'm fairly independent from the judgment of others, dependent on the judgment of others. Yeah, I don't. It's fine. When making a decision, I base my reasoning on tangible proof and facts, reliable data, and reasonable arguments. Um, they seem like the same thing to me. Um, I like proofs and facts, and reliable data is tangible proofs and facts. And reasonable arguments is just the interpretation of data. Oh, I don't know. They're the same to me. When I'm feeling creative, I am more inspired by ideas that may appear disconnected, or ideas that unravel my sensibility and touch me personally. That seems a little intimate. Ooh. Disconnect. That feels like any. Just saying. Um, but I love the any approach. I really do. Um, touch me. I don't like how this is worded. But yeah, I probably agree more with that. When planning something, I prefer to set goals and then outline a general plan that will help me reach it. Stick to a plan I already feel comfortable without experimenting for the sake of it. Definitely this, like always experimenting. Not for the sake of it, but experimenting for purpose, for a purpose. Generally trying to get the best fit for the plan, the goal that is to be accomplished. When helping someone else with a problem, try to analyze it impartially and see how elements are connected. Absolutely. Focus on moral implications. How I would react if I was in the same situation, yes. But I feel like that's FI, and that's like the sympathy. That's also NI, putting yourself into their shoes, and trying to understand the sort of elements and things that are impacting that person who is bringing the problem to you, because you don't want to do things from your perspective, um, because that's not helpful to the person. You have to know what they're experiencing and what their concerns are. Um, but impartial is still kind of, because if someone's coming to you with a problem, they have this heightened emotionality attached to it. So often, well, I don't know, some people might not be looking for advice at all. They might just be looking to vent. But if they are looking for advice, they want it to be impartial. They want it to be grounded. At least in my experience, and maybe that's selection, right? Like default selection. Like the person knows me and is coming to me for advice because I am impartial. So there's a little bit of bias there. For me, justice happens when a situation is judged impersonally and impartially. Everyone should receive equal treatment in accordance to this judgment. A common ground is. I feel like I like how this is worded better. This feels really cold. Um, Although I think situations should be judged impersonally and impartially, but I think you should reach a common ground and you should respect people's needs. Um, so I'm kind of in the middle of those. I kind of agree with both. When brainstorming, I prefer to explore alternatives without worrying about changing directions. I focus on a single direction, being conscious of alternatives but letting them align. I explore alternatives. Yeah. Ooh, but this is they're kind of saying very similar things. But we're focusing on brainstorming, right? If we're focusing on action, I'm more on this side, but if we're focusing on brainstorming itself, so pure speculation, I definitely will like more towards alternatives. What's on the surface hides a deeper meaning, often includes small details most may miss. What? I can kind of see both. A lot of times people might be projecting a persona, or they might be relying upon coping mechanisms to hide certain insecurities. So there's always a deeper meaning sort of beyond what is at the surface level. And I think that's true not just of people, but of ideas and thoughts, processes, really anything, you know, a location as well. Like if you're observing a location, there's usually deeper meaning. I mean, life just goes beyond what you observe with the sensory. I guess it goes back to that. But, you know, there's also small details that people miss at first. So I don't know. Again, I don't feel like this is a dichotomy. And it's not on the same spectrum, like it's different axes. We'll go a little bit more this way. It's because I'm detail oriented, but not at first go. My observation goes from particular to the general, expanding in various directions, from myriads of possibilities to a single fixed point where the various directions converge. I feel like this is more true. Definitely taking in a lot of information, a lot of passive information, and distilling it for the sake of clarity. My personal values come from the inside. I eventually relate them to the external world. Objective and universal standards that acquire a special meaning to me. I don't like objective and universal standards. It feels kind of cold. So, I mean, honestly, this is probably FI, right? When making a collective decision, I prioritize logical arguments over collective consensus. Collective consensus, okay. Here's the problem. You get into groupthink. Groupthink ignores expertise and often silences those experts that exist at the margins because they might be overpowered and they might not be taken into consideration. So I do not like collective consensus most of the time. So I'm gonna go here. Actually, I don't like, well, okay. You can crowdsource some answers to get a bell curve. Okay, so I'll put my feelings aside and go more rational. Okay. I feel more comfortable with direct or mental abstraction for sure. I mean, I like direct experience. That's the, yeah, okay. When helping someone, I try to offer practical solutions or put myself in other people's shoes. That's kind of rude to make that a dichotomy. Because you can put yourself in other people's shoes and then offer them practical solutions. That's how you do it. But probably more towards that direction. What's closer to your way of developing ideas? Everything is open and new. I prefer to stick to a fixed point and eventually start from it. What? What is that? How do you have a fixed point? Do you just like always have a fixed point? How do you begin without exploring first? I don't know. During a discussion, I tend to set aside personal preferences to meet other people's other points of view. Say what I think regardless. No, I'll be like, hey, I'm here for a discussion, so I don't have a personal point of view until someone asks me if I do. Otherwise, I'm just interested in various points of view. I feel more inspired by what's closer to my way of seeing reality or unusual and new ideas. Oh, definitely this. That's more interesting. I mean, okay. let's make the counter argument. All right, let's not jump to conclusions. Closer to my way of seeing things, I'm usually a little bit more open with how I see things. That's an interesting way to put that. Okay, during brainstorming, naturally think about things that fit into your mental framework and are connected to one another, or you can easily think about random things that can or cannot be connected to one another. Usually very connected or even if things are random, like making connections and kind of like tinkering with the thought object and figuring out like where it fits categorically. So that's probably more towards. Are they trying to determine between NI and NE? Probably. Reality is made of symbols and patterns that can be found everywhere. Has a structure and properties, natural laws, cause. Those are the same thing. Write some poetry. If you write poetry, these are the same things. There are natural laws, cause and effect relationships, and those are symbols and patterns. I'm telling you. My interests are very selective and personal, give me a sense of familiarity or special meaning habits, small rituals. I do have habits, but not necessarily small rituals, and they're not really meaning driven. They're more like driven by not wanting to deal with the logistics of repetitive situations. So that's how habits form. My interests are selective and personal. Sure, let's go that way. Why does this feel like FI versus SI? Maybe that's what they're doing? I don't know. When debating, my points are focused on the human side. I make connections between topics and how they prove my point. I don't like ego-driven arguments. I don't like poisoning the well. I don't like sort of emotionally manipulative debating techniques because it's just chock full of logical fallacies. So probably more towards this side. During problem solving, I prefer to solve conflicts, keeping things going smoothly, focus on closure, being neglectful about trivial aspects of the issue. I mean, that's probably more. So, like, SI users would probably really be up in arms sometimes with INTJs because that's our last function, and so we're going to be kind of very neglectful of minor points and minor details that people get stuck on. So TI and SI might like rip into us for that. I do like to. Why do these both seem like the same thing? Because if you solve conflicts, you're also closing the issue. Maybe this is saying moving things on. This says moving things. What? This is where I'm running into issues with this test. I'm gonna say because this is more accurate to the way I do things, even though I see them as being very similar. When making a choice, I have more difficulty with pondering long-term consequences or taking into account impersonal factors. No, I feel like long-term consequences definitely factor into things. Taking into account impersonal factors. That's also not true. But I definitely don't have trouble pondering long-term consequences. So I'm gonna go that way. What's your attitude towards new and untested experiences? Eager to try without knowing what to expect? No, thank you. It depends on what it is. If it's like a physical experience, no, thank you. I'm skeptical of all those who seem not to lead anywhere. I prefer to do them only if I have a valuable reason. Oh, valuable reason. I'll focus on that. Things in the real world are determined by their appearance, shape, and texture, their structure, properties, and functioning. This is how I function. This seems like SE. This seems like NI information for me. Like dealing with information. This feels like SE sort of like reality of objects. So, I don't know. I see both though. I tend to learn things deductively, applying already known concepts to new ones inductively, seeing the general principle behind specific occurrences. I couldn't be bothered to see specific occurrences, so it's probably deductive reasoning. When reasoning, I tend to focus on theory and data analysis that may lead to convincing explanation. What I can experience is, oh, definitely data. I'm a data person. My attention is directed towards community and the human environment or my surroundings and what's happening. Oh, definitely. Okay, this is like hyperactive SE demon sort of mode of like if I'm in an unfamiliar place or there's lots of things happening around me, it's definitely sort of like triggered to sort of jump around. Not necessarily the human elements, because it's like all being overtaken by sort of the surroundings. When solving a practical problem, I look into my own experience, see if I've experienced something similar. I apply my own analysis, try to find a workable solution based on my understanding of the problem. That's probably more true. Because again, my memory of experience is poor. I tend to get emotional more for something that touches my sensibility. I wonder what that means. Something that brings back a pleasant moment. Emotional, yeah, it probably touches my sensibility. Because it's like my core values. It's how I'm interpreting that. Brings back a pleasant moment, feels like SI. You're more oriented towards the inner world of memories and how they are forged the person you are now, interacting with people, knowing about their experiences, building connections. Probably more towards this. Yeah. Love to know about people's perspectives because pure curiosity, definitely. Want to put them at ease in some way, let them talk or vent. I mean, that too. Look, that's the nice thing about liking perspective in general, like I want people to be at ease. I can be a little awkward though, so I doubt people are at ease, but that's what I try to offer with learning about people's perspectives. But it's definitely curiosity if people will share with me. I'll go more towards the middle. Human emotions and feelings are archetypal and can reveal a deeper truth, are universal and the same for every person. Why do I disagree with both of these? Look, so archetypal seems kind of like stereotype, right? That's how I feel about archetypes. Like you're kind of stereotyping and putting things into boxes, and I think universal kind of does the same thing. It's kind of ignoring individual differences. Both of these are. So I think it's a rude question. So I don't feel a certain way, and I'm not moving the dial. Something is true because it's backed up by data, it's tangible, and can be tested empirically. This is the same thing. You test things empirically to get data. Okay? When experiencing something, I give more importance to the impressions it leaves on me. I give more importance to the opportunities it may lead to. I'm an impressionable person. Yeah, but opportunities are important. Why? These questions are so tough. I implore you guys to take this test because it's such an interesting experience of like trying to figure out what to choose on this weird slidey scale. I'll go more with impression because I'm a vibe person. When making a decision, I care about the impact it may have on other people. I trust my own insight. Rough. I do feel like this is probably more FE centric, and this is more where I'm at. But I've tried to get better because I do care about the impact it has on other people. I don't always ask people for advice though, because it's intimidating. Sometimes I will, if it's like someone I trust and I care about the impact it has on them in specifically. But probably more towards here by default. My aesthetic taste is more impressed by what represents me in my inner world, what looks beautiful or pleasant. Oh, oh my gosh. Okay, this is SE aspirational. So, muscles, like people who work out, I just really admire that. Performers, any kind of natural beauty, yeah. Um, Most of the time, couldn't be me. It's not like I'm a super fit person over here, but one can aspire, of course. Truth is multifaceted. Multi perspectives of reality. I do agree with that. Single faceted, objective, and ugh, makes me cringe. Okay. I think it is more satisfying to focus on the development ideas or focus on enjoyable activities. Well, that's me. I usually tend to accept or reject something based on objective fact, accept or reject based on how I feel about it. Probably be more objective in my view, but like my objectivity is highly tied to my emotionality and integrity and my values. So, tough question. In order to get energized, I need mental stimuli or physical. Definitely mental. But you should not discount the importance of physical stimuli. You should always get up and move or do something, go on a walk, whatever, because that can help your mental as well. I often tend to explore my inner self, explore new perspectives. But NIFI does both, so I don't know what you're trying to ask me. My inner world is full of passion and emotion, but hard to express outwardly. Yeah. Key to understanding the world. Yes. Both are true. My inner world is populated by images that I can often hardly explain, revolving around my own values and preferences. It's the core of, yeah, definitely. What is that? I'm not a very image centric person. I'm more audio. Probably more audio kinesthetic. And what I see are words in my head and not necessarily images. When talking with someone, I may happen to recall similar experiences that I lived through. Absolutely. I compare my opinions to those of the person. I may try to find a common ground. Absolutely. Why are these opposed? I'm thinking they're not opposed. Cause I mean, I feel like FI always talks about the self, cause that's like kind of their point of reference, whereas FE probably tends to talk about other people. But trying to find common ground, I feel like people just do it differently, you know? I don't know. Yeah, I don't see that as a good dichotomy. I decide whether something is morally right or wrong based on the emotional impact it has on others or with an unbiased approach based on direct consequences. I think it's really important to consider emotional impact, but it's also important to be unbiased. And probably lean more towards just the word unbiased in general, because I think emotions can bias you. In some contexts, sometimes it's really important. I don't know. That's such a tough question. Wait, it's asking whether something is morally right or wrong. I don't. Morals, are really tough. Okay, empathize with others by recognizing my experiences in those. Yes, spontaneously without. Oh, is that trying to argue that that's FE? That's a hard argument to make. Sometimes people do like follow the emotions and they immediately emote with the other person, and maybe that's why it's trying. Like I can't do that. Um, yeah, I'm not that sort of empath. I am a sympathy person. I am more concerned about my inner values fitting into the world, how I fit into the world. That's the same thing. Like, the integrity is there. Like, my inner values are how I fit into the world. Um, but it's probably more towards this side because it's probably asking if you had an inner value that was different from societal convention, would you conform or would you go with your inner value? And I would go with my inner value. That is the truth. My understanding of concepts is focused on specific aspects, holistic and not always structured. Yeah, even more so. I tend to have an impressionistic memory, absolutely, all the way. How would you describe your perception of things? Patterns recurring in the physical environment. Use my senses to recognize and connect them. Recognize fixed patterns in actions and events based on repeated experiences over time. Probably more towards this way, even though I kind of see both. I may appear cold in emotional display. People have said that. Less concerned about my own feelings, but can result in sudden outbursts when I'm stressed. Why are these on different axes? Because I feel like these are both true. Sudden outbursts in the sense of like, I suffer from, whenever I'm really stressed, I suffer from emotional shutdown, is what happens to me. Like, it becomes very overwhelming and like it's like more towards the side of uncontrollable sobbing, which is really, or a panic attack, which is an awful experience, and I hate to go through it, but it does happen. I mean, stress is hard to deal with, my guys. So cold and emotional, less sensitive about other people's feelings. I mean, it's not true per se, but people perceive me that way. Oh, well, it's saying I may appear. Yeah. May dwell on my own when I'm stressed. I do tend to isolate myself because I don't want to have a meltdown in front of someone. So I'm like, I gotta go deal with my feelings on my own. I gotta manage this stress. So I gotta disappear. I gotta isolate for a while. So these are both very true. When having random ideas, I don't really care about whether they're workable as long as they are interesting. I filter and classify them in a sort of mental hierarchy. That is very true. During extreme stress, find myself indulging in sensory stimuli. Feel aimless and pessimistic. Probably more towards apathetic depression. During reasoning, I trust my own insight or factual proof. Look, NI is very much like, I got you. I got the insight, I got the clarity, I got the view. Um, but it, but we would like to think that it's based on factual proof. Not always true. I relate more to willing to give up my own happiness to some extent if it serves a greater good. Being able to adapt to the circumstances and living my own life to the fullest in order to achieve happiness. Aw. I don't like greater good arguments. I'm gonna go that way. Because I think you can do this. And you can still live peacefully with other people, respecting other people's viewpoints and the way that they live their life and the way that they process information. Um, okay, so let's see. Don't have to necessarily answer this information. Okay, let's see how to read this. Oh, I don't like that. Okay. Uh, let's see. 100% accurate tests don't exist. You're so right. Very complex. Don't be afraid of the results. Okay, so cognitive functions. Interesting. Let's see. I don't agree with this. So interesting. Okay. Now, this to me seems very silly. I don't see how you can be. Yeah. The whole slider thing, I don't know if it works. I don't know if it works. I don't know if it's a valid way to do this test. Oh, this is really worth doing and analyzing though, I think, because if you're thinking about building a test or if you're thinking about evaluating cognitive functions in other people, I think you have to, yeah, like take them with a, like I think you can't do percentages. I think that's just not correct. Um, because I do feel like it's sort of like on an axis, right? Or that's more like towards the Jungian sort of theory, right? So like, um, yeah, I think that's really interesting. Now, what this might sort of suggest is like the sort of cognitive functions that I like to interact with. I really love interacting with any. I love TE people. Give me some TE people. I love the structure. I like FI a lot. My partner is TI. So this is really talking. This is telling me who my ideal partner is because my partner is an INTP. um, so that's interesting. Um, FE, I think I just have a blind spot. Uh, somehow somehow SI happened. I don't know what that's about. Yeah, this is very odd. M type scores. Ooh, so interesting. What it Your most likely type is it's reading any um but I just like interacting with any. I just I don't know about this. Is this saying like what I would most likely be mistyped as? That's so fascinating because ENTP is kind of like the shadow. And okay, so I I like I really fall in love with ENFPs, but I know we can't live in the same house. So we can't be in that type of relationship. INTPs are a little bit more structured, even though they're very unstructured, but I think the TI kind of keeps them in line, and their FE demon means that if I'm cleaning the house, my partner's gonna clean the house as well because they feel guilty. So that's pretty good. ENTP. I don't know. I don't know how many ENTPs I've interacted with. Uh, I feel like that'd be a little bit intimidating to interact with ENTPs. Access the test key. Okay, so I don't know. Come at me with how you feel about this test. I don't really agree with it. It's very strange. Very strange. But it was fun to do. So, hey, if you want to check it out, you could also go here as well. Just to, I mean, it might even be worth just comparing it to, me who has taken it. And just be kind of curious about how you move that slider around because it's very difficult to decide. Okay, so that's it for today. Thanks for hanging out. Have a great day.